Good evening and a happy New Year's. Welcome to Desh Bangla Live with Tania Amir. Today I have with me Ms. Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner to Bangladesh, a columnist, author and an academic. It's my pleasure to welcome Veena Sikri. Hello Veena, how are you?
Very well. Good evening, Tania. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for making the time. So you are considered these days as an expert on Bangladesh issues, and you have been the first and possibly the only female High Commissioner to Bangladesh. What is your take on the situation?
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed my years as High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. That was from 2003 to 2006, when we had the government led by Begum Khalda Zia. At that time, yes, I was the first woman Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh. There has been one more after me, Riba Ganguly, in more recent years. But really, otherwise, it's been a very male-dominated set of High Commissioners from India to Bangladesh. We've been watching with great concern what has been happening in Bangladesh since last July, August. I think the whole concept of a so-called revolution or a so-called spontaneous student uprising, that has totally worn itself out, because it was Dr. Mohammed Yunus himself, when he was speaking in New York in September last year, when he went there for the UNGA, but he was speaking at the Clinton Global Initiative. And when he himself said to the audience that don't think this was spontaneous, it was meticulously designed. And then he introduced the mastermind and he said, here is the mastermind. So there comes on the stage Mahfouz Alam, who at that time was his special assistant and later became advisor to the interim regime and known by everyone in Bangladesh as a member of the Hizb ut-Tahrir. So I think
Which is a banned organization in the UK.
Yes, and it was banned in Bangladesh as well. But then, now I don't know what the situation is. Yes, it is a banned organization in India as well. So this is where it all began. That the whole myth of a spontaneous student revolution sort of broke in September last year itself. Although even before that, from the way in which everything was conducted, we were all watching with horror at this regime change operation, which was done by Pakistan through the Jamaat-e-Islami and with the Western powers behind it. And the Jamaat-e-Islami has been in power since then. They really are the force behind the throne. Dr. Mohammed Yunus, I think, is their spokesperson or whatever you may describe him as, but certainly he is not the person in control. And I think that there were two or three events that we saw, or let's say series of happenings that we saw the moment Sheikh Hasina's aeroplane left Dhaka on the 5th of August 2024. One was the attack on anything to do with the Awami League, the killings of the people, the imprisonment of Awami Leaguers, the destruction of every statue of Sheikh Mujib. I mean, immediately the plane had hardly left Dhaka, and you saw these big cranes, 100-foot cranes coming there, going up to these major statues and demolishing them in a matter of hours. You cannot demolish these big statues in a matter of hours, no matter how you try, but there obviously had been a lot of preparation for this. And the second stream of activity was the attacks on the minorities. And I would say here, even on the women, because, the women have been in such a bad, terrible situation ever since last year. And I know that anybody who goes there to Bangladesh for a visit, I know that some people from India have gone on visits in the last 18 months, but they receive these dire warnings: be careful, don't go out, do this, do that, and the situation is very bad. And the minorities, of course, the Hindu, Buddhist, Christian Occupation and others have been documenting it. I think even global organizations have been documenting it. So this has been terrible. I think even the 9 months of the Liberation War saw these kind of attacks, this genocidal attacks on everybody, on the intellectuals, the women, all the everybody who was in East Pakistan, and that has continued now for 18 months. So it's really, really terrible. And recently, from the people, from the families of those who have been killed in the last 10 days or so, they're saying that they've been killed because they were being asked to pay a jizya tax. Now, this is a tax known from the time of Emperor Aurangzeb. At the Mughal, he was considered one of the most rigid emperors of the Mughal rule, and he used to charge this jizya tax to be paid only by the non-Muslims. And now in Bangladesh, in the villages, you're getting evidence of this tax being charged. And when you can't pay, then that's it. You're just shot dead, and this has happened to several people. And it's very worrisome, and we don't know where Bangladesh is going with this kind of a
These are the
situation.
jihadis who is demanding these taxes, and on Christmas Day, I think churches, about more than a dozen churches were vandalized. The
Absolutely.
Sufi shrines, the Baul
Yes,
singers, the Udichi, the Chayanot, and of course the
I
two
know.
major newspapers were burnt to ashes, their buildings.
Yes, 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 absolutely. No, it's I've got a third stream. You're absolutely right. It has been across the board. Any symbol of culture, any symbol, women are being told, don't dress like this, you can't walk like this. And any symbol of culture like Chaya Nor, I mean, what a wonderful organization. And the Baul singers, I mean, they are not only a big big string of connectivity between India and Bangladesh, because you have the Baul singers on the Indian side and the Baul singers on the Bangladesh side, and they've been, the civilizational connect in so many ways, but now their lives are in great danger and difficulty. And, I think the attacks were terrible, and you're absolutely right on that. The third
Professors
thing,
who are also progressive secular. Girls' football is being banned.
yes,
So
yes.
it's not really just minorities. It's really the majority people of Bangladesh who are being persecuted in this manner by a minority group of radicals and jihadis. Would you not agree?
I agree that I think the way you put it is very good and very exact, because really it's a persecution that is the key word. I mean, this is what it is, and this is what is happening, and it's all because you want an Islamist regime, because the people are openly talking about saying that you want Sharia law, you want a caliphate, and in one of our papers even carried about the way in which some people have been talking about how they actually had to kill policemen, and they said if we hadn't killed the policemen, we would not have succeeded. So all these, events are there, and in fact, the paper's report was that this person who was bragging in this way was taken into custody, but within 2 days they're out on bail. There's no FIR filed, nothing. They're just out on bail. And the third stream of the activities that I was telling you about, I think, was on the media across the board on Bangladesh media, the attacks, the taking over of the boardrooms, so many editors have changed, so many journalists are in jail. They're in jail on
And
murder charges.
lawyers, about
Yeah,
800 lawyers are in jail. So
exactly.
inside the courtroom, lawyers who are defending their clients are being attacked by so-called mob, but they're not really mob, as you rightly pointed out. They belong to this so-called revolutionist, and their candidates or their leaders are in the cabinet while this were going on. So this is
Absolutely, I
state-sponsored.
agree. Yeah, I agree with you fully. I think that the attack is on all the democratic institutions, and the purpose is that through the mobocracy, to change people, like whether it's a Supreme Court judge or a High Court judge or a professor in a university whom you do not like, or a member of the bar, a member of the judiciary, and the bureaucracy as well. So now you've got the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is the force behind the throne, controlling all major aspects of the academia, bureaucracy, judiciary, and media. All these institutions have now been, subpoenaed, as it were, to listen just to one person. And people tell me that they cannot even write the word Sheikh Hasina unless you use the term facet before it. Then maybe you will be allowed to include in your writing. So this has been what we've been watching, and now this whole sham of the elections, that is
Just
coming
before
up.
going into the election, the description that you have given, Veena ji, it is very reminiscent of a cultural genocide, along with the statues, the shrines, but that were hundreds of years old, the Sufi shrines, the bauls, the mandis, the churches, and most importantly, Muktijuddha museums. Road 32
Yes,
was also a museum. So
yes.
anything that represents our history, our culture, and hence the attack is also upon the cultural Udichi, Gushtis and Chayanot, and newspapers, Prothom Alo, Daily Star, when they talked about that Jamaat may not form a government as per their survey, the anger had outburst upon them and it was burned. So it seems to me, and the world hasn't woken up to it, it's very akin to a cultural genocide. So the whole ethos of the Bengali nationhood, it's based on the Bengali culture, our language, our culture, which is one of the four pillars of the constitutional basis upon which the nation was born. And that is purported to be eroded away. And Dr. Yunus, in the same meeting at the Clinton Institute, and thereafter, he repeatedly said that there should be a reset to history, push a reset button. So with that background, if we can move on to the election, and I would like to also focus on the referendum, because it seems that the referendum is cloaked very nicely within the framework of an election, and most people are punting whether BNP will come to power or Jamaat will come to power. But the real issue vis-a-vis Dr. Yunus is concerned, and he said that on the 1st of January of 2026, that the fulfillment of his regime will be once there is a referendum. So it doesn't matter who comes to power, possibly a national government is being planned, and Dr. Yunus would like to elevate himself as the president of the republic. And now the referendum, if we can focus on that, I know there's a lot of talk about inclusive election and free and fair inclusive election, but can there be a referendum on the same day? And the referendum is based on the July Charter, and the July Charter is not going to be annexed with the ballot papers, which is about 30 or 40 different items. And the referendum asks 4 questions. And one of those is that giving effect to the July Charter, all political parties who are elected to the next parliament will be bound to implement that. My question to you, Veena ji, someone who belongs to a world's largest democracy, can the future parliament be bound by the current regime in any manner whatsoever? And is that totally derogatory to the concept of parliamentary democracy to tie the hands of a future parliament in any manner whatsoever?
Absolutely. I mean, the entire electoral process, first of all, look at all the unconstitutional acts that have gone in so far. This regime itself was sworn in on a constitution that didn't allow for an interim regime or any form of caretaker government. So its very existence is unconstitutional and illegitimate. And in fact, many people in the regime itself, I've heard even Tawhid Hussain saying, yes, we know that we are unconstitutional and, but that's why we want to have election. Now, when they're going into elections, then they're asking for a simultaneous referendum, which again has no provision in the existing constitution of Bangladesh. So this is again an unconstitutional act. So how can an unconstitutionally nominated regime, do the charade of a constitutional reform council, 6 reform committees, and a completely, 10 or 12 people getting together and making all these decisions on behalf of 180 million people, and then saying that, no, this is what it should be. Now, this is absolutely unheard of in a democracy. And I don't think anybody would give any credence, any democratic credence or any kind of credence, certainly no judicial credence at all, to what an outcome of such a referendum would be. The people, as you say quite rightly, don't even know what is in the July Charter. I think that, even if you want to get a copy of the July Charter, it's not that easy, I don't think it's been printed in any of the newspapers. Has there been any debate or discussion on the July Charter? Absolutely none at all.
So do you think the people are being duped in this referendum, which is predicated upon the July Charter? Not many people have seen or read the July Charter, and the July Charter was an outcome of a constitutional reform committee. And constitutional reform can only be done by 2/3 majority in parliament, not by a committee selected and placed to reform the constitution.
I think there should be much more awareness about this, but the media there is not being allowed to write about it at all. But I really think there should be strong awareness, because what the people are being asked to do is just say yes or no. But what are they saying yes or no to? They have no idea. As you said, there are 4 questions, but I don't think you can
And which
take
is
individual.
predicated upon 30 to 43 different items. And the July Charter is not annexed to it. And the literacy rate is not 100% in Bangladesh.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
it will take them half an hour or more to read and understand. So, no one has circulated this July Charter, which is really a sham. What they're purporting to do is to place the July Charter over and above the Constitution. So, which relates to Dr. Yunus's talk about reset button. So, everything starts from July Charter, not the Proclamation of Independence, which is 10th of April 1971, nor the birth of the nation, nor our constitution. So everything is to start from the July Charter, and everything before that is to be reset and erased. And this is a cultural genocide, the genocide of the ethos of the people of Bangladesh. So this is very serious.
Yes, and actually, the people of Bangladesh fought for democracy, for freedom from oppressive rule by West Pakistan, and how they were not being able to express themselves culturally. All forms of music was banned. Rabindranath Tagore's Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's music was banned. His poetry and literature were banned. So many other aspects of culture were completely subdued.
Nuzrul, Rabindranath, Lalon, Baul, women were
Alone,
not
yes,
allowed to sing and perform
yes,
in stage.
absolutely.
They were asked to wear the hijab, not the sari. So I remember my mother's aunt saying, when they were growing up, that as to what they wear or they will not wear, it's their choice. The state has nothing to do with it. And they don't need religious policing or moral policing. And this is what our mothers and aunts fought for. And it's so anachronistic that after 54, 55 years, this is purported to be come back by the jihadis and the radicals.
And that is an amazing part, because the jihadis, the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is the main force behind the throne, they took it for granted that since Awami League, even banning the activities of the Awami League, on what basis do you ban the activities of the Awami League? I mean, I would like to draw attention that even whatever you may call the regime, even in Pakistan, when Imran Khan was in jail, but his party people were allowed to take part as independents, and they won a lot of seats. And even in Sri Lanka, when Rajapaksa regime was brought down by another color revolution, but then when the elections were held, his party was allowed to take part in the elections. And even in Nepal, where elections are going to be held after 2 months in March, there too, where the Oli regime was brought down by Gen Z and another color revolution, but then again, Oli's party is taking part in the elections. So on what basis does one unconstitutional regime decide on its own that this is that this party must be banned, the activities must be banned? And in fact, I saw an interview which Dr. Mohammed Yunus gave in New York this time 2 3 months ago in September, when he was there. And somebody asked him, why have you banned the Awami League? He said, no, 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 I have not banned the Awami League.
Yes,
So,
yes.
to the
This is
media,
not only
you say,
New York, also before the Chatham House here in London. So it
yeah,
was absolute verbal inexactitude when he denied that this party was banned. Although we knew, because as per the executive order, they invoke Section 18 of Anti-Terrorist Act, which talks about banning, not suspending their activities. So he actually lied before the Chatham House in New York, because the Western community doesn't like to see any party being banned. And
yeah, that's
which is very surprising when the Overseas Development Minister from UK visited Bangladesh and was sitting with Dr. Yunus a couple of months ago. That was the first time he admitted the truth, that no, Awami League will not participate in election because they're banned. And this was in a meeting, not with the local media, but
right.
with the Overseas Development Minister of UK.
My question is, why is it like, let's say, the Overseas Development Minister of the UK, and you're in London right now, why are they not raising their voices more? Because in so many other countries, they have raised such a hue and cry about what they define as unparticipatory, non-participatory elections, and unfair, undemocratic elections. But in Bangladesh, everybody is quiet. Why is it like this?
Well, one of the reason we invited you, Veena, is also to raise the awareness here in the UK. And we've had a few members of parliament in my show, as well as a member from the House of Lords. So trying to raise awareness over here that actually what's going on in Bangladesh. And coming back to the referendum again, the July Charter, one of the reform committee that Dr. Yunus himself initiated was to reform relating the laws governing the women and to have a set of uniform laws so women are not discriminated on the ground of their gender or religious persuasion. What is interesting, the jihadists and the radicals did not want any reform, and they have shunned the Women's Committee. And Dr. Yunus went along with them, and a committee that he himself appointed, they were abolished. So in the July Charter, there is no input or participation from women. And
My
even
God.
the election, that's a nomination that has been given, even from this NCP, the Students' Party, women have resigned, all the women have resigned. They're saying that they are not wanting women leadership. And even from BNP, one of the candidates, Rumin Farhana, one hears in the grapevine that in order not to have women's leadership, she was also not given a nomination from BNP. So
My God.
where is the women's leadership here? That is
There is
totally
not
missing. So
absolutely.
in the July Charter, there's nothing, no, 50% of the population did not participate in the July Charter, at least 50%, because the women's representations were not there. And that is very serious in a democracy. That is
Absolutely.
totally antithesis to democracy. That's
Absolutely.
on the one hand. On the other hand, as we discussed earlier, that in order to reform or amend the constitution, that can only be done by two-thirds majority in parliament. So Dr. Yunus initiated this reform commission or reform committee headed by, there were no constitutional lawyers or experts, known experts there. Ali Riaz was co-opted, an American national from US and brought in to carry out the task. And they purported and proposed constitutional amendment, which is absolutely coram non judice, because no government has been given power to amend the constitution, leave alone an unelected government. This can only be done by parliament.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
they have purported to reform the constitution, and by way of this referendum, they're trying to throw away the constitution, saying that the future parliamentarians and the parties who participated once elected, they are bound to implement the July Charter, which gives the July Charter, as I said, a higher position in the Constitution or above the Constitution and the proclamation of our independence. So this, in a way, they're trying to do away with the republican character of the nation itself.
Yes, and I think this really directly contradicts. There's no law court that would allow this to happen. You know that.
Bless you.
I think there is no law court which would ever allow this to go through because, as you said, it contradicts every democratic principle, and the people of Bangladesh fought for these democratic principles all along, and even in so many elections in Bangladesh, like even when the caretaker regime was there. It was brought in because the 96 elections were considered to be not free and fair. And then, Begum Khalda and Sheikh Hasina again worked out together to have a caretaker regime. So the people of Bangladesh are so sensitive about being representative, having free and fair and inclusive elections. And now to suddenly foist this referendum on them, they don't know what it's about. They're forced to say yes or no. Whether they will say yes or no, we don't know whether it's going to be just on their behalf, because it's never happened. No referendum can judicially be held in Bangladesh. It's not there in the constitution. So on what basis is this being held, and why is it, even by having it together with the so-called parliamentary elections, because
Yes.
when they're not participatory, they really cannot be genuine at all. It's really worrisome.
On this, Ms. Vinaji, we need to take a short break. So stay with us. We're going to go for a short break and come back to Amir TV, a channel of your choice. Thank you.
पहले मैं ऐसी दिखती थी 3 साल पहले। अब इस बीमारी के बाद से मतलब मैं ऐसी हो गई हूँ। पहले मेरी बच्ची बहुत सुंदर और हंसमुख थी।
वक्त उसकी खूबसूरती को मिटा गया। दीपा की दोनों किडनियां खराब हो गईं।
डायलिसिस पे मेरी तबीयत हर बार बिगड़ती है, पानी भी नहीं पी पाती हूँ। डॉक्टर ने कहा है कि आप जल्द से जल्द ट्रांसप्लांट करा लीजिए, वरना आपके साथ कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है आगे, शायद आप ट्रांसप्लांट के भी लायक ना रहें।
किडनी की बीमारी का असर धीरे धीरे लीवर पर भी होने लगा।
10 लाख रुपए बताए हैं। एक ही दुकान है छोटी सी किराए की, जिस पे प्रसाद बेचते हैं। जो कमाई होती है उससे घर चलता है मुश्किल से। काफ़ी कर्जा भी कर लिया है। मैं अपनी किडनी दूंगी अपनी बच्ची को।
मैं चाहती हूँ आप लोग मेरी मदद करें और ताकि मेरे को एक नया जीवन मिले, मैं अच्छी लाइफ जी सकूँ। हम उदयपुर गए और उन्होंने हमारी गंगाराम में ट्रांसप्लांट के लिए जो पैसे दिए उससे हमारी हेल्प हुई।
किडनी देने के लिए डॉक्टर ने बोला, मेरे मन में जरा भी कुछ नहीं आया। बच्चे को जीवन मिल रहा है माँ से, तो कोई बुरी बात नहीं है।
अब मुझे अपनी लाइफ में मौका मिला है कि मैं जो भी मैंने स्टडी की है उसका मैं फ़ायदा उठा सकूं। अब मैं जॉब भी कर सकती हूँ और अपने लिए कुछ काम भी कर सकती हूँ।
दीपा की गुम होती खुशियां वापस लौट आईं।
मेरी बच्ची को नया जीवन मिल गया है और उससे मैं बहुत खुश हूँ। और अब हम माँ बेटी बिल्कुल ठीक हैं।
नहीं तो हम तो उम्मीद खो ही चुके थे हर तरह से। काफ़ी हर तरह से मतलब केयरिंग के बाद अब दीपा हमारे साथ है।
जिन लोगों ने भी मेरी हेल्प की है उन लोगों को भी मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कहना चाहती हूँ कि उन्होंने मेरी लाइफ को मतलब बचाया, मुझे ज़िंदगी जीने का दोबारा मौका दिया।
हमारा नाम अंजनेल है। हमारा डिस्ट्रिक्ट महबूब नगर, तेलंगाना। हमारा ये पूरा ये तकलीफ हो गया। इधर कट करते बोल रहा है हैदराबाद से, इधर कट करते है कि हमारा काम करने के कैसे आएगा सब।
उदयपुर आते ही ऐसा लगा मानो कोई अपना मिल गया हो। गरीब बीमारी कष्टग्रस्त आंजनेय का हुआ जटिल सफल ऑपरेशन।
हमारा ये बीमार है, हमारा को इतना मोटा पैर है सर, इतना बीमार रहता वो निकल गया। उधर वो नारायण सेवा संस्था मुंबई के भेज देते, उधर ऑपरेशन कर दिया। हमारा 4 लाख रुपए खर्च होगा। वो नारायण सेवा संस्था 4 लाख रुपए खर्च दिया था। अब 25 किलो वजन है, वो पूरा निकल गया। अब इपड़ पूरा बीमार पूरा खत्म हो गया सर।
हस्बैंड पैर अंजनेलू, इतना पैर मोटा है, मुंबई से ऑपरेशन काट दिया।
हमारा काम करने के चलने के अच्छा आएगा, अगर खोदने के दिक्कत नहीं है, हमारे चलने के अच्छा है।
मेरे बच्ची के बचपन से समस्या है कि ये सुन नहीं पाती है, तो 5 साल पहले इसका ऑपरेशन हुआ था, कोक्लियर इम्प्लांट नाम का। तो इसका बाहर का मशीन है जो ख़राब हो चुका है। अभी डॉक्टर कहते हैं कि आपको खुद लेना पड़ेगा, जो कि कीमत इसकी 2,70,000 के आसपास बता रहे हैं। नारायण सेवा संस्था के जरिए मेरी बच्ची को सुनने का मौका मिलेगा और उसका भविष्य सुधर जाएगा।
आप लोगों से निवेदन है, आप मेरे बहन की मदद कीजिए ताकि इसका इलाज हो सके।
Dear viewers, thank you for remaining with us. We're coming back after the break, and I'd like to welcome Veena ji. Before the break, we were talking about the referendum, and you're talking about the regime of Dr. Yunus. Now, Dr. Yunus came to power, as you say, based on Article 106 of the Constitution, based on an opinion by the Appellate Division. Now, that was predicated upon a resignation letter tendered by the Prime Minister, which they could not produce. So it begs the question whether there was a fraud upon the Constitution at all, whereby they have exercised Article 106 of the Constitution. But the second question is even more important, because that opinion, even if it's valid, which is questionable because no one has seen that opinion with the actual signature of the Appellate Division judges, and as I say, there is no resignation letter which this opinion is supposed to be sought, because there is supposed to be a resignation letter. But putting all that aside, that opinion mainly gives Dr. Yunus power to conduct day-to-day affairs of the Republic. Election or referendum is not day-to-day affair. So on that front alone, this is very problematic. And in the meantime, the caretaker system has been resurrected from the Supreme Court. So the caretaker is a recognized government under the Constitution, which contemplates that within 90 days, the caretaker will hold election. Now, it begs the question, therefore, is not the current regime usurping the power of the caretaker government in an unconstitutional and illegal manner, because they have no mandate to hold election, and referendum, as we already discussed, is not even in the Constitution?
I think in the first place, you're right, because the very fact, the way in which this regime was sworn in was not constitutional, because even the correct papers have not been produced. The resignation letter or the opinion of the judge itself has not seen the light of day.
No one has seen it.
No one has. And then to say that after 90 days, since there's been no election and they've done much more than just law, they have not been able to maintain law and order at all. And they've tried to go much more by talking about these 6 reform committees and then this Constitutional Reform Council and so on. All that is completely not allowed in the Constitution, not provided for in the Constitution, and certainly not provided for in the caretaker government, which even as you say, the reconstituted courts have allowed it. But even so in my opinion, I think that there is no way in which Dr. Mohammed Yunus can be the chief of the system when the elections take place. There has to be, if the caretaker government system has been revived, then there has to be a proper caretaker government constituted and mandated when it was there in the Constitution, immediate past Chief Justice or the other categories that were allowed for other than the immediate past Chief Justice. So I think that entire process has to be gone through, and to have elections under Mohammed Yunus, it doesn't make any sense at all, because he has long back forfeited his ability as chief advisor or any kind of post that he may be holding to conduct the elections.
Yes, so this is not a day-to-day activity. So even if that opinion, which no one has seen with the actual signatures, is day-to-day activities only, that is permissible, and election is not one such activity, and referendum definitely not. So the coming back to the current scenario and the amount of violence and the atrocities that is going on every day, we are finding dead bodies without decapitated, floating into the rivers, a reign of terror that is being unleashed. Is this the right environment for an election at all?
Not at all, because in fact that is why, because the constitutional provisions are being violated, and you need to get back to the CTG system that has been restored now by the courts. Get a person in those categories, beginning with the first choice of immediate past Chief Justice, and get law and order back, and then have elections. You cannot have elections in this kind of a violent, prohibitory mode where everybody is being intimidated. Everybody,
Absolutely.
the Awami Leaguers are being intimidated. They have a no vote campaign, but they are being intimidated to go and vote for Jamaat-e-Islami, and the minority, the Buddhists, the Christians, the people from Chittagong Hill Tracts, everybody. So atmosphere of intimidation is rife in Bangladesh, every activity. And we know that because of this, all economic activity has also suffered, and the economy has really gone into a downturn from which it will take a long time to recover, because the rate of growth has halved. I mean, it's, instead of 6.5%, 7%, it's now possibly less than 3% rate of growth. There is no domestic private investment or foreign direct investment coming in. 350 factories at least have closed down, so people are out of jobs. Inflation is very high, and even medical care. So many issues are there, which make it very difficult for the people of Bangladesh to have a normal living conditions. So in this kind of a situation, on top of that, if you have all this intimidation and violence going on, I don't know how anybody would be able to even leave their houses, leave their homes to get to vote. I mean, it's looking like
on the other hand, I hear the minority community has been told you cannot stay at home, you have to go. And not do you only have to go, you have to vote in a certain way in favor of Jamaat-e-Islam. So it's working both ways. Now, under the Constitution, Article 119, Election Commission is a creature of the Constitution, and it's been mandated with 4 functions. Number 1, election of the President. Number 2, election of parliamentary members. Number 3, delimitation of constituencies. And number 4, if you like, preparing the voter roll. So those are the 4 functions of the Election Commission. Under 119 sub 2, it says any other role permitted by law or the Constitution, which means that something complementary to these functions. Now, the government, what it has done, it's suddenly created an ordinance. As you know, an ordinance will have to be that type of a law which a parliament is capable of passing. Now, in order to hold a referendum, they passed an ordinance, but no act of parliament by simple majority can allow for a referendum, because 2/3 majority would be required to bring back the provision of referendum. So they are purporting to do something by an ordinance which a mother law, an act of parliament itself could not do. And what is interesting, in this ordinance, no mandate has been given to the Election Commission to hold a referendum. No power has been given. The presiding officers, who will collect the referendum and compilation, and they'll give it to the Election Commission, who will they'll do the tabulation and announce the result. That is a procedure, right? But where is the mandate? Even in the ordinance, no mandate has been given to the Election Commission to hold a referendum. So the whole thing is half-baked. It's absolutely illegal and unconstitutional. It's an absolute mess. And
Absolutely.
in
And
that backdrop, how do we go ahead with this referendum and the election, as you say, where there's no environment whatsoever?
exactly, even this whole process of the interim regime passing ordinances, I mean, how could that's not part of their mandate at all.
It's
And
not
they
day-to-day function. Yes.
exactly, way beyond day-to-day function. And they passed ordinances not only on, as you said just now, described in detail about the holding of the elections and the referendum, which there's no mandate for, but also on things like, where Sheikh Hasina will be tried. So the trying of Sheikh Hasina in the ICT is something that just out of the just been manufactured like that, where there is no mandate at all for the ICT. It was formed way back to try criminals of the liberation war, war criminals of the liberation war, and now you've been brought it. So this is just another example of the way in which the democratic structure, the parliamentary structure, the constitutional structure of Bangladesh has been completely weakened, and I would say to that extent destroyed, because now you've got to get back to a system where you've got to bring back elections held in a proper way under the parliament, under the constitution, with the properly nominated caretaker chief, and then you have to go in the newly formulated parliament and see which of these ordinances would ever pass muster, because an ordinance also has to be cleared by an elected parliament. So that is where the importance of inclusive elections comes in, and there is so much discussion on this going on right now. I really hope that they do come up with an agreement on having inclusive elections.
As you rightly pointed out, the International Crimes Tribunal, they've changed the constitution of it. So they've appointed judges. As per the law and the constitution, they can only be individuals who are eligible to be High Court judges. Now, some of them has passed their retirement age, so they're not eligible to serve as High Court judge. So the question of serving in the ICT doesn't arise. And some of them never even served as a judge ever in their life. So they have no experience whatsoever to perform as a judge, and the international criminal law is not an easy subject. You need to have skill, know-how, and someone who has never acted as a judge. How does that person even qualify? On the other hand, you have the prosecutor. The chief prosecutor was serving as the chief defense counsel for Jamaat Islam. So there's a total conflict of interest to act as a prosecutor. So a lot of people have termed this as a kangaroo court, which has no jurisdiction to conduct themselves in this manner. So that remains a very important issue, and I'm sure in the future these issues will come up, both on the question of extradition, whether it was politically motivated or not, and as well as before the national courts when it goes for appeal before the highest judiciary. So these questions will definitely come up, whether they at all even had the jurisdiction. The other important point that you raise, Veenaji, is the whole question of a caretaker government headed by the immediate past Chief Justice. So that provision has been resurrected from the highest court of the land. And Jamaat and some of its lawyers tried to say before the media, they immediately ran out of the court and caught the media attention, saying that this will only be effective in the next parliamentary election and not now. Soon thereafter, because the Supreme Court, under the leadership of the immediate past Chief Justice, has its own secretariat. So there was a press release of the operative part of the judgment that I have seen. And I have not seen anything there where the appellate division has said that this is not effective immediately. Once a provision of the Constitution is resurrected, it's effective there and then. So we have a provision in the Constitution of a caretaker government, as you rightly say, which can hold free, fair and inclusive election with the full constitutional mandate. Why on earth are we not pursuing it, and why our development partners, both at home, various ambassadors, high commissioners at home and abroad, Why aren't we highlighting that and challenging Dr. Yunus's mandate or authority to hold anything beyond day-to-day function, which he has done?
This is a very, very important question, because the omerta, this wow of silence that is there, nobody is questioning anything that Dr. Mohammed Yunus has done or is doing, and nobody is linking it up to these very important constitutional questions that you and I have been discussing just now. And I think that this is going to be a grave disservice to Bangladesh, because ultimately, if the elections are not inclusive, if the elections are not properly held as provided under the,
And this totally unconstitutional referendum,
it's not going to lead to any kind of solution. There will still be violence, there'll still be insecurity, there'll still be instability, because the people of Bangladesh actually want proper elections. And in fact, Mohammed Yunus, for the first few weeks or months that he was there, he kept talking about this, saying, oh, earlier elections were not proper, so we have to give our children a right to vote in elections that are properly held. And he's doing exactly the same thing himself. He's what he was accusing Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of doing. He's doing exactly the same thing himself. That having these elections, which are not representative, not inclusive, and having them without, the caretaker regime headed by the immediate past Chief Justice. So I think that these situations, these contradictions, the constitutional, breakdown of the constitutional machinery that Bangladesh was so well renowned for, because the judiciary in Bangladesh has always been proud of their achievements. And I know the cases you have fought. I mean, the cases you fought yourself to make sure that the constitution was observed in every aspect, and that the constitution's supremacy was observed. To say that the constitution is supreme, it's above any other document.
Supreme law of the Republic, as a solemn expression of the will of the people. So
That's right.
what is very interesting here is that in the referendum, the July Charter, the so-called Charter, they've taken the word secular out of the Constitution. And that's the key. I think most of our development partners and even friends and colleagues at home and the media is not talking about that enough. So basically the basic characteristics of the Constitution is purported to be thrown out of the window. So the word secular has been taken out in the July Charter. This is what they want to implement by this referendum. And the balance between power between the president and the prime minister. Now, the president wants to have more power, and they talk about the balance of power between the president and the prime minister. So the indication, what it seems that perhaps Dr. Yunus has his eye in a non-secular Bangladesh and changing its republican character. Now, incidentally, Veena-ji, even if Parliament wanted to change these basic characteristics of the Constitution, in Bangladesh, as you know, we have this doctrine of basic structure, which means that the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be amended away. So these are the basic pillars upon which the Constitution is predicated. So like democracy, rule of law, a secular character of the Constitution cannot be eroded away. So this something even Parliament cannot do. This is what they have done in the July Charter. And if Dr. Yunus were to become the president by virtue of this July Charter and the referendum, then there are three things. A, he becomes the supreme commander of the armed forces. B, as the president, he will be immune from all prosecution. Now, there are charges of tax evasion, money laundering, and of course, the atrocities that has happened where he has sat absolutely mum, allowing the mob to do these sort of atrocities. So there is a liability. And of course, decimating the Constitution, which tantamount to treason. So as a president, he'll be immune from all sorts of prosecution. And thirdly, as the power of the president is slowly increased and the prime minister power is diminished, that is a very lucrative and attractive position. And it seems that this post is purported to be created with someone particular in mind. And who is that person?
there's a talk, of course, that this was all part of the deal and so on. Not only will Dr. Yunus be president, but then whoever wins the elections will be the prime minister. And right now they're showing in the polls of BNP. And then the deputy prime minister will be the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami. So that consensus of a so-called national government. But all this depends on inclusivity, because the people are not going to accept, I think, an election which is not inclusive, because that will create so much chaos, forcing people to go and vote, forcing a yes vote on the referendum. All these are not
It's
factors
not even a referendum. It's like 4 questions. One is to bind future parliament based on 30 to 43 different items, which is not annexed with the ballot paper. So it's ludicrous. And those items are absolutely, all of them is unconstitutional, where there's been no representation of women or women's rights or women's equality.
What you spoke about basic structure is very important. We have the same, that nobody can change the basic structure of the constitution. The basic pillars of the constitution, they have to remain, like in our
Which
case,
is democracy, the human rights, the rule of law, the equality of the 3 organs of the republic, and the secular nature of the constitution, which is paramount. And they have touched upon that. No government can change the constitution, whether by referendum or otherwise. Only parliament can, and even parliament cannot change this basic structure.
That's right.
So this is very, very worrisome, that Bangladesh may remain a name, but the very ethos, the very culture, our identity, our cultural premise is all purported to be demolished. And this tantamounts to a cultural genocide. Would you not agree?
I would agree fully. I think the use of the word genocide is very appropriate here, because everything that the Constitution of Bangladesh stood for and has stood for all these decades, it's sought to be removed, changed. And so that means that the cultural basis of Bangladesh will be sought to be changed. And I think we've already seen a kind of an indication of the reaction of the people, because when, Mohammed Yunus tried to change the instructions given earlier that in every school there will be a music teacher, a singing teacher, a dance teacher, and a PT teacher, physical training teacher. He changed that, and actually there was quite an eruption on the campuses, on the colleges and the universities, And I remember seeing some of the coverage where they said that the students were saying culture and religion for us are 2 sides of the same coin. They have to be blended together. We all are religious, but we value our culture as well. But this whole anger that erupted was completely suppressed. It was not covered in the media, but the news did come to India that this has happened. And when they
you raise a very interesting point, because this is just not mob, it is not just Jamaat Islam, which is purporting to demolish our culture. This is actually government sponsored, because the government had passed a law, and our viewers must understand that. And the law is that government will not make any appointment for physical education teachers or music teachers. They will be replaced by clergy. So the young minds will not have any physical education, nor any music, dance, poetry, theater, nothing of the sort. So it's kind of a Talibanization of society. So this is something very, very worrisome, and the Bangladeshis will have to rise up against this sort of cultural genocide and persecution. Vinaji, any last word before we end the show?
I think our faith has to be in the people of Bangladesh, because they are the ones who are expressing themselves. All the people who joined, and then everybody said it's a spontaneous student uprising because they thought this was genuinely the quota reform issue, which, as we all know, had been changed much earlier. All those people have now left the NCP. You yourself spoke about some of the women who were there earlier who left. And we saw that the NCP, which is supposed to have been
this is a students' party for our viewers, yes.
Yeah,
the women are now saying they were misguided, and they were mostly Shibir and Jamatis, but this was not a spontaneous revolution as they thought it was. So the girls have left.
And so the people who were in the forefront of what they call as the July-August uprising, they are now alone, because even when the elections were held in the universities, Dhaka University and Jahandhar University, NCP was nowhere. I mean, they were way back third or fourth. That means that the support which they may have been touting at one time that they had is no longer there. It's disappeared.
Of course, there are also allegations of corruptions. A lot of them from rags to riches. That sort of stories are rampant in the media
a lot of
and social media.
disproportionate income and things like that. So all these issues have been coming up in a big way. So I think the people of Bangladesh are very aware of this, and I'm sure that in their mind they know what kind of democratic structure they have wanted for always and have always fought for. When there were any aberration, they fought for it to come back on track, and I'm sure they will continue that effort of theirs.
Thank you so much, Vinaji, for coming to my show, and I hope it's not the first or not the last. So hope to have you back soon. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. Joy Bangla. See you again next week.